Good afternoon. We're now going to move on to the presentation of the strategic plan of the OPC Spain Federation. It's a report that was prepared by ECONLAB, whose director, Ricardo Rojas, is with us this afternoon. Well, just a brief overview of Ricardo's CV. I could go on for 30 minutes talking about his background, but he has a degree in business studies, and he also complemented his training intensely working on social media, internet and tourism. He has a master's in marketing and also a master's in environmental management. He's completed different courses, he's attended conferences, congresses related to this subject and field, and in terms of his professional experience as a partner of different technological companies such as My Company and Sport. He's also an independent consultant, a speaker at conferences, and he's going to give us a brief overview based on his participation as partner manager in ECONLAB in research and marketing, the results of a report which will be available to all of you on the OPC Spain Federation webpage, or with the documentation we'll send to all of you. Since we're running behind schedule, Ricardo, you have the floor. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Well, I'm going to try to be as brief as possible, given that time is running short. Well, I think that we've already talked very much in great detail about both the theory and the practice of the topic that we're looking at. Everything is changing around us, but everything changes around us, taking into account that there are different variables that perhaps we didn't really need to address today, but which we should bear in mind, not just in Spain and in other Mediterranean countries, but in all European countries. There are changes taking place of all types: social, technological, environmental changes, and we're witnessing a gradual digitalization of our society and penetration of internet in the way we do business, the way we operate, and the way in which we access markets, capture clients, and build their loyalty. And it's precisely the tourism sector in which pioneering initiatives have been developed. And this is not something new. It's not the first time that we're dealing and looking at this digitalization process. It's a situation that's been changing for some time now. That's the reality. You just have to look at a few changes about how we've moved on. Today we talked a lot about smart cities, about smart destinations, but I haven't heard much about smart citizens. The perspective of the smart citizen, perhaps as we as tourism companies, from the perspective of a PCO, a hotel, a restaurant or a travel agent or any tourism company, it's precisely there that we have to place special emphasis on what these smart citizens, our clients, wish, prefer, and what their expectations are. Again, it's not necessarily the typical congress, events or business clients, but we all know that we all adopt this profile whenever we travel, principally for business. And it's important to focus on our experience. If we look at the column on the left, different moments of experience during the trip, where different situations may arise in transit and arrival at the airport. Well, 47% of travellers don't like to have to stand in queues. They don't like the stress of the trip. They don't like having to go through customs or passport control. They don't like getting lost. They don't like getting lost. They don't like looking for places they want to visit. They want to arrive directly, and they don't want to spend so much time in this. They don't like leaving places without really learning about the characteristic identity of the place they're visiting. They want to have unique experiences in each destination. And they also want to be extremely demanding with respect to tourist services. The same applies to access to data, information of a professional nature or any other type of data. In the right column, we can see how different technologies allow us to identify automatically passengers. Yesterday, when we arrived at the hotel, everything relating to our digital tickets, things which avoid stress, avoid us having to go through customs control. I was yesterday looking at the question of these digital bracelets, which people are beginning to use. They've already been used at congresses and conferences to serve a similar purpose. Everything relating to digital recommendations, experiences that can be enjoyed at different locations in order to be able to obtain more information and knowledge about destinations. All of these things that we like to do and like to have, which will resolve many of the problems that are highlighted there in the left column in relation to things that we don't like. So technology can help us to overcome many of these things. And it's this part of the tourist's experience that's important. It's important to match and synchronize this with the actual trends in our sector. We've carried out important work in ECONLAB in relation to this project of strategic planning for the OPC Spain Federation. Looking at the situation of the sector, and I think that many of these things are not new to you because we've asked many of you here in the room today for information and for your feedback. To summarize, we want simpler congresses and events. We want simplified conferences that are much more collaborative and more social. The social media has a lot to do in this area. They also should facilitate more innovative experiences, as we've heard in different presentations today, which generate knowledge. That's precisely because we want to learn something about how we can organize, manage in a smart manner any event or congress, and also within the framework of any smart destination. That's what we want to learn. But we want to do this much more intensely. Therefore, that's something we're going to require to, or we're going to need to improve much more in the future. We talk about knowledge, therefore we talk also about sustainable and socially responsible events and hybrid events, both attendance-based events and also the possibility for establishing contact online. We talk about access, mobility, mobile contact through mobile devices, mobile access to all of these services at any time. We talk about the cloud services, big data. We've heard about this today. In short, we're talking about adapting to a smarter world, integrating not only everything relating to ICTs, but also the improvement of effectiveness and environmental efficiency, the use that we make of our resources to minimize environmental impacts, which we cause in the organization of our events, and which should also be shorter in time. And the speaker from the Fira in Barcelona mentioned this in his excellent presentation, that there's going to be a focus on much more intense networking, which is of greatest interest to all of us, and of course at a lower cost and with a greater return on investment. Before we managed things in this way, but we continue to do this also. We can clearly distinguish three main phases: pre-Congress, Congress and post-Congress. And the pre-Congress stage was very different in each stage. Obviously, prior contracting of the PCO, then there would be a phase of preparation of the event, and all of the different flows were perfectly identified and defined. The same occurs with intermediaries. However, all of these different things that we could perfectly identify in three large stages, well, now there's a much more explosive mix. And these flows of services, this direct contact with the participants at the event, takes place during the pre-Congress stages, during the Congress itself, and after the Congress is concluded. And demands are even greater on the part of these users. So the work model, therefore, has changed. And if everything around us changes, we cannot remain immobile. PCOs have to be companies that continue to compete, and business organizations have to represent the PCO sector, which also have to change. If demand changes, requirements will change, as will the social and economic environment and the demands of our stakeholders and the people we work with. So in this sense, we also have to change. And we have to change towards greater quality requirements and demands. We have to take into account the fact that the experience that Congress participants have is much better. We also have to focus more on innovation and creativity applied to the type of events that we are organizing, rather than the intermediary role which generated income before. The reputational image is also important. Look at what's happened with the Smart World Expo Congress and the framework of that Congress, which served as a driver, which gave rise to this type of hub, and which led to the organization, or which will lead to the organization of this macro event at different locations worldwide. PCOs also have to present their services in different ways to Congress organizers and promoters, and of course participants. In short, all of this must always be underpinned by a series of services which are geared specifically to achieving ongoing improvement and excellence. Services which, whether we like it or not, will mean that we have to remember that the participant is most important, and which will continue to structure and underpin these smart congresses that we aim to organize. Now we are moving towards a greater, let's say, merger, and I'm going to use that term, merger or fusion, let's say, between these different pre, post and during stages, which in the past were much easier to distinguish. In short, and I think this has already been said today, we're not just before changes. It's not a period of change. It is a change of period, a change of epoch, of era, in which we are gradually immersing ourselves. Therefore, we have to be capable of reacting, not just businesses individually, but also together, en bloc, and through collaboration. And that a great role, therefore, has to be played by business organizations nationally or within each region in each individual country. And in this way, we can help achieve greater cohesion. In short, what we have to look at is how we can make our PCOs competitive in this new environment, more sustainable, and what role can business organizations play. And that led to the launch of the 2015 strategic plan. A diagnosis was carried out which led to an analysis, and let me use this expression, an analysis of the business model for our employees in this country. For those of you who are not familiar with the Canvas approach, basically this is the value proposal, which basically symbolizes or represents the type of offer or services, the main value that we want to confer to or to pass on to our clients, who are our targets, and which will principally be other organizations or institutions at territorial and provincial level, and of course PCOs, but also where the Employers Association can also have other clients, which can also involve collaborating companies and other professionals in the sector who participate, just as yourselves, like yourselves, in events that are organized by OPC Spain. We also maintain a relationship with our clients. From a historical perspective, this has been geared very much towards marketing and sales channels. They were traditional channels, using email and presence on the internet, Twitter, Facebook, and of course the web, and of course always channeling information and services that were rendered largely with the support of territorial organizations. In order to ensure that this proposal reaches these clients through this type of relationship and through these channels, for us, so far, these different activities have been very important, which in OPC Spain are strategically defined. So this is something very important, providing information to associates, lobbying in order just to simplify and facilitate basic general interest services, including training, human capital or key resources that we can deploy to ensure these activities are carried out. Well, they're fundamentally human capital. In our case, in the case of OPC España, is formed by the Executive Committee and, of course, ICT tools, which are basic and fundamental. And of course, in order to carry out these activities, these have to be organized with partners, key stakeholders, key partners, such as the Spanish Confederation of Business Organizations, which has recently appeared on the scenario of OPC España, and also other organizations in the MICE sector, with whom we maintain a very close relationship. When organizing these type of activities and making use of these resources in conjunction with the support of these partners to offer this value to our clients, well, this means that we incur these cost structures and obtain these income flows. And the percentages are indicated there. Given the current scenario, well, things become more difficult because, among other things, subsidies in the form of public financing are not so easy to obtain as they were in the past. And also because we also have to question our own value proposal so that we can provide a better service to other companies and PCOs, and also to strengthen our territorial organizations who are members of OPC España. Therefore, after the diagnosis, a strategic model was proposed, which was rather different. It hasn't been fully agreed and approved, partly because we want to present this directly to the sector at a meeting which will take place in a couple of weeks. But just let me inform you about the key elements that we want to achieve. And I've highlighted these in red just so you can see the differences. First of all, the value proposal has to facilitate PCO's competitiveness in the smart environment in which we're operating, and in cooperation with stronger territorial organizations that are more sustainable, economically speaking, and also to the benefit of society, without prejudice to the fact that we have to continue defending and developing these different aspects which continue to be critical and which are also highlighted here. In this case, clients continue to be the same, but we have to place greater emphasis and focus on strengthening the competitiveness of our territorial organizations, and in this way strengthen the competitiveness of our PCOs. And this can be done through our relationship with these entities here, ensuring more fluid relations and also in collaboration with these territorial institutions, making more intensive use of distribution communication channels linked to internet, social media, for example, and is going to be increasingly important, and also networking channels, both attendance-based and virtual. Well, you can see what the FIR Barcelona business model was. It's very much in line with that presented by other speakers today. These are critical aspects for the success of any event or congress, and are equally critical for our business model. A business model where the value proposal helps us to become more competitive, helps PCOs to be more competitive, and also facilitates knowledge which helps them take decisions for their management, and also about knowledge about the markets in which they do their business, about their profiles, their customers, and how they can adapt to these changes in this smart environment. Knowledge, therefore, based on large transformations in this digital world. Knowledge which will also allow us to provide advanced services. And of course, as a territorial organization operating nationwide, we have to continue our leadership in the promotion of Congress tourism. And the executive committee's role will continue to be a role. The human capital plays a critical role still, but at least now, in this new model, there's also a possibility for us to support our approach much more effectively on the use of technological tools, and in particular digital marketing tools. It's not sufficient just to focus on the MICE sector or the business tourism sector. We also have to broaden our view and look at other types of services companies, organizations that represent all areas which are changing in this smart environment, advanced management, training organizations, etc. And this, foreseeably, if this is the strategic model that's eventually accepted by the OPC España Board of Directors, after necessary assessment evaluation of same, this will necessarily lead us to changes in the structure of income, in cost structures and income flows. And this would undoubtedly make us much more sustainable from an economic standpoint, and we're all aware of how important the economic factor is as a source of sustainability. Based on these cornerstones, on these key elements, there's also a series of proposed directives or strategic blocks within the 2015 strategic plan of OPC España. Some of these are geared towards providing services. We've gone from being an organization that promotes and generally defends the interests of the sector, which it has to continue to do, to an organization which also should place much more emphasis on making PCOs or providing PCOs with access to this digital transformation in order to compete in this smart world. And that is the first block of programs and actions. Evidently, these functions of representation, promotion and influence in the sector have to continue. And perhaps now additional efforts have to be made in obtaining data, statistics, market studies, knowledge of the reality of the Congress sector, the Congress market, how our Congress centers and trade fair centers operate, and how we could use promotional instruments, ensure their effectiveness. In short, it's all about knowledge. And as was said this morning, none of this is worthwhile or makes sense if we don't have territorial organizations that are the ones who can transmit this message best and ensure that these services reach associated PCOs. These are the keys, the fundamentals behind the 2015 strategic plan. And as I said, and I must emphasize this, this is not closed. We are in a stage of consensus and evaluation. That is the proposal that has been presented by our company. And with all the best intentions, I am grateful for the confidence that's been placed in me by OPC España, and it's been a pleasure to present this. This would be the message I would leave with you. We're facing a change that's absolutely necessary, but it's a change that's possible. And that change is possible if we can foster this change together, working as PCOs together, and also with other entities and organizations in the MICE sector to ensure that our PCOs are once and for all more competitive and more sustainable in this new smart scenario of the MICE tourism industry in which we operate. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Ricardo, for this wonderful presentation, which I'm sure once it's read in depth will give us quite a few clues on the way we want to lead. We've got to become, of course, adapted to this change of epoch. We will try to turn ourselves into smart companies, and if you've got any questions, this is the right time for that. I believe all of you will study this document, which will be sent to you from OPC Spain. And now I just want to give you some information. Mr. Julio Abreu is going to give us some information on this. Congratulations, Ricardo. And it's maybe a question I asked myself, but in a loud voice. During the last few months, OPCs, professional conference organizers, have been suffering a lot on the side of our clients in terms of security in the premises where we work. So we are being shifted the responsibility of the place where the venue where we're going to organize a conference is got all civil liability insurances, evacuation, anti-panic doors, etc. Because of that, which happened at the Madrid Arena. And that leaves us in a very complicated situation, because some of the buildings we use, you know, the ones given the permits is myself. We've come across that situation, so we're running in circles. Because in order to be safe, we request from the municipality of Madrid, please accredit this place. It counts on all permits, and they tell us, how do you dare requesting that if I am the institution, the official institution, having to check that in other places? So which would be the perspective we should integrate into our strategic plan covering this aspect? Operational, legal, whatever you may call them. And for me, they are not very much at hand, because I do not count on the human resources that would allow me to make an in-depth analysis. Well, the last part of the question was key regarding our own standing point. The truth is that we're usually small to medium-sized companies, and we cannot count on the resources to have a lawyer, counselor, advisor every time. So that's why we, as an association, we should share services and ideas which are useful for us all. So the strategic plan, the first of the blocks included here, action blocks, and that block is oriented towards OPC Spain through its territorial associated organizations, and each of the regions and provinces can provide its members with a series of professional services. So that task of providing services to partners is necessary as ever, and even more if, for example, we reach an agreement or make a contract with a lawyer's office, and through the territorial organizations that could be reaching down to the member requesting it. That, of course, without forgetting how important communication is. In meeting tourism, we're leaders, so we want to continue being leaders. So highlighting once more how we transmit, how we communicate on society, how we exert that leadership through the media we have at hand, how decision makers and organizations we relate to are aware of that. That's fundamental. So these issues, such as, for example, security in the venues, is something which we can tackle with more peace of mind. And well, we will start from the main entrance of the conference hall, and we will the bus going for the venue of this night's dinner will start at 8:30 at the main entrance of Hotel NH. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy your afternoon.